Hey, so good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ryan Andrews, and this is Jen. We'll introduce ourselves a little bit more later, but today's brief webinar will be all about adding an ADU to your property, or really any of our cottages. That can be as an ADU or even as a main unit or a couple of units. And we'll go into some really cool case studies about that. So today, what we're going to do, we're going to compare. We're going to talk about what an ADU is, what our approach is to building and designing ADUs. Then we're going to talk about really the economic case for ADUs versus going and buying a rental on the other side of town, for example. And then those case studies I mentioned a little bit ago, and then we'll do some Q&A. So think of questions as we go. We know we've engaged with a lot of you already one-to-one, so thank you for joining to kind of get the full pitch on this. So a little bit about Hiatus Homes. We've been in business almost 10 years now, and we've really developed an expertise in designing, building, developing small homes. And so to us, that means homes between typically 500 and 1,000 square feet. For years, we were just developers, and we'd put together our own cottage projects, and people would periodically or not periodically, very often, email us or call us or ping us and be like, hey, can we buy one of your designs? Can I put one of your cottages in my backyard? And honestly, we were always pretty opinionated about saying no. And it's just been in the last year and a half or so where we've opened up a program that we call Hiatus at Home, where we will take our designs, everything we've learned about building cottage communities, small home construction, and put it on your land. We'll do that as a single unit. Often we call that an ADU in your backyard. Again, we'll talk more about that. Or we'll do multiple unit projects. We're based in Bend, Oregon. The majority of our developments have been local here. That's a huge advantage because Bend has had some really cutting edge building code and zoning code that has allowed small housing development. So that's allowed us to be on the cutting edge of this trend that's now spreading nationally, and we're trying to grow with it. So we're doing projects all over the country right now. And so we're not just limited to Oregon. And it's really exciting. So happy to work with you on a project from Florida to Maine to California. And so that's just a little bit about us as a company. And now we'll share just a little bit about who Jen and I are, and then we'll get into the meat of it. So I'm an owner here at Hiatus Homes. My day-to-day title is CFO, so I run all the financing side of this business. And Jesse and I partnered in 2019, so about 6 years ago now, to create the Hiatus Capital Fund and finish up the Hiatus Benham project, which was a 22-unit cottage cluster community in Bend. And that project was unbelievable. We built 22, but I always say we could have sold 100 if we'd had them. And so we also created an investment fund then to go on and fund a series of projects. And then about 2 years ago, we created the Hiatus at Home program in order to bring our units out to other developers that have land or people that just want a cottage or an ADU in their backyard. And that's been a really fun program for us to work on. So that's a little bit about my background. I'll let Jen introduce herself, and then we'll jump in.
Yeah, so I'm Jen Redd. I'm the director of sales here at Hiatus. I also am our certified ADU specialist. So it's an additional accreditation through Earth Advantage that is designed to, provide additional expertise beyond just, kind of the normal day-to-day conversations about things just like we're talking about today, where, bringing ADUs to your property, how that impacts, investment opportunities and home valuations, all sorts of things like that. So excited to share a little bit more with you today. So as we get into it, what exactly is an ADU? And unfortunately, it's not a straightforward answer. But the reason that is that there are so many different things that are kind of encompassed in it. There's a lot of definitions that vary a little bit from jurisdiction to jurisdiction and state to state. So for our purposes, you know, an ADU or accessory dwelling unit is going to be a secondary housing unit on a single family residential lot. Ultimately, their purpose is to increase development potential. So it allows you to get additional living space on a single piece of property. And as this says, you know, the fun part is nearly every jurisdiction has different definitions and different requirements around what an ADU is, how to build them, how to develop them, how to classify them and get them permitted, all things like that. So here at Hiatus, we specialize in developing stick-built cottages. So stick-built means that they're going to be on foundation. They're not modular, they're not prefabricated, but they're stick-built cottages, which range from about 450 square feet up to about 1,100 square feet. We can actually build and permit these in a variety of different scenarios.
And two comments on that before we move on. One of the reasons so many jurisdictions around the country have added an ADU allowance to their building code is it allows the city to add density without clear cutting neighborhoods. So without having to demolish a whole neighborhood and redevelop something, you can actually add density and housing in a pretty affordable way to your existing neighborhoods, retain the character of the neighborhood and some of the older buildings. So it's really cool. Another comment, the modular piece has gained a lot of traction in the last couple of years. But by building stick built, we're able to create a much higher quality and more energy efficient home. And so that's one of the reasons we are focused on stick building right now. We have done modular in the past, but right now we're finding that stick build just creates a much higher quality home.
So going into a couple of the scenarios that I mentioned, you know, a lot of folks reach out to us and they're interested in developing an ADU for potential rental, whether that's short-term or long-term rental. We have a lot of clients who are interested in developing an ADU to kind of provide a multi-generational living space. So maybe there is an adult child or an aging parent that you want to kind of keep close, keep them on the same property, but allow some separation and some separate living quarters there. So those are probably the most two popular reasons that folks reach out to us for developing an ADU. More so, especially in the last 6 to 9 months, we've seen folks reach out who, maybe they got a home, purchased a home in 21 or 22 and have like a sub 5% interest rate on their first home. And they're now kind of outgrowing that. And so they need a little bit of extra space, whether that's home office, maybe family or the household has grown a little bit. And so they're reaching out to actually add an ADU rather than purchase an entirely new home and, kind of compete with today's rates and lose out on that really great rate that they got a couple years ago. So that's certainly something that we're seeing an increase on. A couple other scenarios that we won't go into quite as much in here, but certainly we do specialize at Hiatus, is homeowners who really want to develop a property to highest and best use. So to Ryan's point, that is really focusing on being able to maximize that density. And then we do work with some folks who are, they're housing advocates and they realize that, up and down the West Coast and throughout the nation, we are facing a housing shortage. And so we're able to work with folks who are, kind of advocating for additional housing and looking to provide opportunities just for additional housing in their community. So those are some of the common scenarios and certainly kind of what we specialize at with our Hiatus at Home program.
So when we think about why to build an ADU, why put a cottage or a separate dwelling unit on your property, and especially utilizing the Hiatus design, you can see the photos here are two examples. The lower one is about a 600 square foot ADU we built on top of a garage. And the top one is just an example from our cottage community. That's a 600 square foot cottage without a garage. So the way we build, we utilize high performance design and high performance home construction practices. And the goal there is really to lower the operating expenses long term. That's kind of the economic goal. There's some environmental goals, climate impact goals, etc. But when we talk about the economic benefit, we're trying to lower the operating expense by creating a very efficient structure. when you build an ADU on your property instead of, buying a rental property over on the other side of town, and you put a tenant in it, you have much higher tenant accountability. So this is a big benefit in that, like, your tenant sees you, you interact with them every day, they're much less likely to damage your property, much more likely to help you get on top of maintenance, etc. And so it's just so much easier to have a rental on site than it is across town. Really, that applies to maintenance as well. You'll catch maintenance issues quickly. You'll be able to take care of them easily, versus, again, trying to hire a contractor or a handyman to go over to your rental across town. The other piece, and this is one of the biggest trends that we see for inbound calls, is multi-generational family living. With housing costs going up so much, it's very hard for young families, for example, to afford, their own larger home. And they might have a parent that's like, a baby boomer that has a large home but doesn't need a large home anymore. And so, by adding an ADU in the backyard, that allows this multi-family or multi-generational family living. A grandparent can live with adult children and grandchildren, help with childcare, help with maintenance on the property and everything, but everybody has their own space. I always joke, I love my parents, but I don't want to share a fridge with them. Every time they come to my house and visit, when they leave, I'm like, what is all this stuff in the fridge? And so those separate spaces create much healthier family dynamics as well. So, but really, so those are just kind of the overall benefits. Really, the secret here is around profitability and financial accessibility. So let's jump into a scenario on that. Okay. ADUs can be a lot more profitable and accessible than buying a rental. So this is a real world example right here in Bend, Oregon. So on the left side, I found a rental property that is currently for rent, listed for rent here in Bend, Oregon, for $2,000 a month, or $5 less than $2,000 a month. I went and looked up on Zillow the last time this property transacted. And it sold for $365. You can see now it's actually gone down in value, but sold for $365. It's renting for $19.95 a month. So if you think of the typical way to buy this as a rental property, it would be, $100,000 down. Your monthly debt service and expenses on the property would be a little over $2,000 a month. So at $19.95 per month rent, you're actually cash flowing at negative $80 a month. This is very common for rental property up and down the West Coast. It's very hard to find properties that cash flow. Almost everything is relying on appreciation. And so when we look at the economics here, your cash on cash return is actually a negative 1% per year, but then you get the appreciation on it. And most real estate investors are negatively cash flowing and then banking on the appreciation, maybe banking on interest rates to go down so they can refinance or pull cash out of it. Now, let's compare that to building an ADU on your own property. So the build cost here, we put at $250,000. That's even a little generous, but that would include the utility hookups, your horizontal, what we call the push out. So moving the dirt so you can put your foundation in. Well, one of our ADUs that we built is renting for $2,000 a month, so almost the same exact price. But the build cost is $250,000, not $365,000. So your cash investment here is more like $50,000, because you can usually utilize, and we'll get into financing later, utilize like a HELOC or a construction loan to cover most of the costs. So the monthly debt service and expenses is much lower, $1,630 a month instead of $2,075 a month. You're borrowing a lot less money and you made a smaller cash investment. So your monthly cash flow is actually a positive $371 a month. So your annual cash on cash return for just year one is almost 9%. And you're still capitalizing on that appreciation because you've created a whole bunch of value in your property. So because you own your land, you already own your backyard, you've already paid for your backyard, adding a rental property to your backyard at just the cost of construction makes way more financial sense than going and finding a new rental property across town. And then add on top the benefits I was describing on the last slide, which is like, it's right in your backyard, so your tenant's gonna be more respectful. It's right in your backyard, so maintenance is gonna be easier. And ADUs just make a ton of sense economically in today's high interest rate, high real estate price environment.
So our process with Hiatus at Home, we kind of boil it down to three principles. And so we call that a design permit build. So when you chat with us, we will say we are a design permit build partner. The way that that looks kind of breaks down to this. So before we even get into design, we work through with our clients what we call as a feasibility study. And what we're determining in feasibility is really helping you understand what the horizontal infrastructure cost requirements are going to be. So not only can we put an ADU, can we get the size that you're wanting on the lot based on, you know, your unique goals and the floor plan that you choose, but how much is that horizontal cost, or excuse me, that horizontal infrastructure going to cost based on the uniqueness of your site? And so that's the very first place that we start. You know, without feasibility, you're kind of opening yourself up to some surprises later on. And sometimes, you know, we had early projects that those surprises were coming when our clients had already invested a significant amount in the build. And so with feasibility, we're able to actually get a much more clear idea of what those infrastructure costs are going to look like before we get, you know, significantly invested. Once we get through feasibility, you know, our designs, as Ryan said, we build high performance homes. We have a few different floor plans that you can choose from, and they range, like I said, from about 465 square feet up to about 1,100 square feet. You get to select your fixtures, your finishes, kind of personalize some customizations in there as well. And then we move into the permitting phase, which is really something that we do different as part of the Hiatus at Home process that a lot of, you know, other folks aren't necessarily going to help with. So our goal is always to be a partner with our clients through the process, and we understand that permitting can be really challenging. We'll get into a couple case studies in a few moments, but you know, there are different ways to permit a project based on what your goals are or how you're intending on using the ADU or the cottage. And so we will go through and be a consultant, kind of quarterback conversations with the city or with the jurisdiction that we're working with to make sure that we understand how much permits are going to cost. We understand how we can permit these to get you to your ultimate goal for this developing. And then last, you know, we have Hiatus approved builders, Hiatus certified builders that come out and again, stick built on site. Usually the process for the actual build only takes about 4 to 6 months. And then you're getting certificate of occupancy and you are either, you know, moving family in, moving friends in, or being able to rent out your ADU at that time. So that's, as we break it down, the design permit build kind of process, just really in a nutshell.
And one final comment on the build side. So we've been general contractors. Hiatus owned a general contracting company for years, and we built all our own stuff. Now that we operate on a national footprint, it did not make sense for us to be a nationwide general contractor registered in 50 states. But by being construction experts, we're able to partner with local builders, whether that's in Oregon, we've got an outstanding builder partner here, or all over the US. And we run the construction administration there. So you don't have to worry about a general contractor taking advantage of you, charging you too much, charging you for things that don't happen, because we manage that process for you.
So a little bit about our designs, as Ryan was saying, you know, we do build high performance homes and cottages and ADUs. What that means is they are extremely efficient. So actually over 30% more energy efficient than a standard new home. We have, out of all of our designs and all of our developments, we have not had a single home since the Oregon home energy score requirements came out. We have not had a single home score less than 10, which is a perfect score.
10 out of 10.
So, you know, what that means is your energy expenditure over time is going to be saving you money in the long run. Our designs, you know, we have a 465 square foot unit, which is a single level plan. So really great for multi-generational living, or if you just want kind of the smallest that we have. We do also have a couple lofted units, so 600 and 800 square feet, either single loft or dual loft respectively there. Both of those can be built with or without a garage. So if you're not wanting to, kind of navigate adding a driveway and adding, some curb cuts and requirements like that, the option without a garage is a great option. If you do want to offer parking and kind of have that, that's certainly an upgrade that you can choose there. And then we do have our standard 2-bedroom floor plan, which is a little bit larger. We usually permit that as a single family home or a detached duplex in most scenarios. But that one is going to be a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,000 square foot.
These are some renderings and photos, just kind of a montage of some of our units. And so this is our 600 square foot single loft unit. I love this unit. We have one of these under construction here in downtown Bend, Oregon, that we're building for a client. And I was just in it last week, and it is so cool. I mean, it feels really good, really spacious. The high ceiling is amazing. The way the kitchen is set up with that little closet area right at the edge of the galley kitchen is just outstanding. You can't see it from here, but to your right on here, you could put a big like 3-panel sliding door to create indoor-outdoor space and a deck. So the 600 square foot is just an awesome unit. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, do you have more to say about it?
We were just chatting before we actually started the webinar about how great this unit is kind of taking shape. We had a previous design that was a little bit more narrow, and as you were walking through it, it's we made some design changes because we felt like it was a little, kind of a little too narrow. And so we're really excited about this design. It's a great use of space for 600 square feet and just feels really functional.
This is inside the bathroom in the 600 square foot unit. So, kind of the opposite of what we were looking at. You're like looking out. So there's the big window and door. Like I said, we could do a tri-panel door there and a deck. Bathroom's beautiful. Clients get to pick their tile and everything. So, just awesome renderings. All right, this is inside our 800 square foot dual loft unit, and you can see we're kind of looking up to the sleeping loft, and then there's a catwalk that goes behind us to a storage loft area that could be a flex space that's like closet, work area, storage. You could put a small twin bed up there. I mean, there's just so many options. We love this 800 square foot. It is super livable. It's a beautiful design. You have lots of options here. You can even add an island here where the kitchen is, with room for like seating for 3 little stools. It's just a great unit.
And one of the things that you'll notice that is consistent in all of our designs is, we specialize in building small homes. And so we understand it's very different when you're designing in less than 1,000 square feet to make a space not only functional, but to look and feel very spacious so that you feel comfortable actually living in the space and occupying the space. We do that with really tall ceilings. We use a lot of natural light, so you'll see a lot of windows throughout. And it's just design principles that we, being small home builders, we know and live by. So getting into a couple case studies, we wanted to share with you some of the projects that we've worked on, some potential challenges that kind of came up with those, and then just some of the different scenarios. So like I was alluding to earlier, there's a lot of different ways to actually permit and approach a project. So this is a multi-living, multi-generational space. Our clients came to us and they had a bare flag lot, and it's a younger couple and wanted to move dad kind of right next door. And so they wanted to develop 2 kind of matching 800 square foot ADUs. So I believe we permitted these as a single family detached plus an ADU. And I was mentioning earlier some of the reason that we do feasibility the way that we do. This project actually it's in a really old neighborhood and had some outdated utility connections. And so there were some additional requirements. And if we would not have approached the feasibility study the way that we did, this project could have had like a $60,000 implication that we didn't know about. after the production had already started. And so that was kind of a challenge. Ultimately, we work really close with the city to make sure what those requirements were going to be, and make sure that our client understands what those cost implications were looking like before they made that significant investment. So 2 really beautiful homes, side by side. They actually just moved in last week, so it's been pretty cool to see them get keys and move in, and be using the space and moving in their belongings and whatnot.
Okay, this one was an awesome one. This one is under construction right now. I was in this project just a couple days ago, and we were building 2 units on a lot in downtown Bend, Oregon, that is in an unbelievable location. It's so good. So the lot had a little home, little old mill home on the back in downtown Bend, Oregon, that was being utilized as an Airbnb. And then it had this big gravel, crappy looking front yard. And the client owned this, and they were looking for a way to optimize rental income on the property. So we came in, did a study, and said we can put 2 units on the front of this property. So we were doing an 800 square foot and a 600 square foot here that are both going to be utilized for income. And so this was a great one. This one had some financial challenges from the sense of like getting the construction loan on this. And so we really worked with the client to try to get the right construction loan, figure out what that meant. They ended up refinancing a different property to pull some cash out and put it into this one. So anyhow, the point on that, instead of going into the actual nuts and bolts of it, is that like we can work with you to create a pretty creative financing strategy to fund the construction on this project. And so I think this project's just going to be outstanding. It looks amazing, and the rents in this area of town are going to be incredible.
So this is another interesting one. So this is a property where it was actually platted as 2 separate lots, but it really felt like that secondary lot was just the homeowner's front yard. And so when you actually look at the property, it looks like your primary single family detached home, just your standard single family home with an ADU. Because it was a secondary tax lot that we were developing on, we were, approaching permitting as the single family detached development. But they also had some pretty restrictive CCNRs in their community. And so those restrictions were saying that we can't develop, or the homeowners can't develop anything that's less than 1,000 square feet. And so we helped this client, we connected them with a land use attorney, and they were able to get community support. They worked really closely with their, the folks who are the Architectural Design Committee, which was who was mandating these CCNR restrictions, and ultimately got an update or an amendment passed to their CCNRs that allowed for the development of the smaller homes. And so not only is it benefiting them, but now everyone in this neighborhood can actually take advantage of, being able to add infill into this really beautiful community. So this was another fun one. Like I said, there's so many different things that come up, and every project is very different. And having someone in your corner to be able to navigate this is really what we pride ourselves on with throughout the development process, whether that's during feasibility, whether that's during permitting, or if we're doing something during construction management as well.
So the point here is like, if you have some legal or real estate law oriented issues, don't despair. There might be a path through it, and we can help you do that. In real estate parlance, we call it a hairy deal, of like, oh man, that deal's got a lot of hair on it. But this worked really well. We were able to work with the client, and so yeah, happy to work with you, even if there's some hair on your deal. Okay, financing. How do I pay for it? Right? This is what everybody needs to know.
So most of our clients, probably one of the most simple and straightforward ways that you can finance an ADU is with a home equity line of credit or HELOC. The reason that it's kind of the most straightforward is that most banks are generally not restricting how you can use HELOC funds. So what that means is you can use those funds from every aspect of the build. So that's feasibility, that's design, it's all of the infrastructure and the permitting, as well as the vertical build itself. There are also products out there like an ARV HELOC, and that stands for an after renovation value, which allows you to actually use the appreciated value that an ADU is going to bring to your home. And you can draw a percentage of the loan to value of that increased amount. So some creative opportunities within the home equity line of credit products. And then there's no refinance requirements after you actually finish the build. So again, if you have a really great rate on your primary mortgage and you don't want to touch that, you don't want to refinance that at the end, a home equity line of credit or an ARV HELOC might be a great option.
Okay, other options. You've got two other options. If you don't have enough equity or can't get a HELOC, the first is just to get a construction loan. So construction loans are great because they are specialized loans for development projects. And so you borrow the funds, you're approved for a up to a certain amount of the budget on the construction, and usually your bank disperses them on a draw schedule. You only pay interest incrementally as funds are dispersed. And so very easy way to do it. You can get these from banks if you're doing it on your primary residence. There are second position construction loans available. That's a pretty new thing, just the last couple of years. So again, if you have a primary mortgage, in some cases, you can add a construction loan as a secondary mortgage in order to fund the construction of that ADU. So again, lots of financing options. The third one is private money and private equity, private money lending, balance sheet lending, what used to get sometimes called hard money lending. So these allow for creative financing in a much greater way. We have utilized this type of capital for all kinds of projects in our own fund and for clients. And so these are really good options if you're an aspiring developer. So let's say you have a property that you want to put 2, 3, 4, 10 units on. We can work with you to get a private money construction loan to basically facilitate that development. They will also work for individual deals. So these are very flexible. The last advantage is these are higher leverage. So these kinds of lenders will often lend you more money at higher loan to value ratios than banks will. The only downside is you're paying for it. But like all things, you get what you pay for. You pay for a higher interest rate and higher fees. You get access to more money, more flexible money, a lender that'll work with you and is used to the draw schedule and everything. So again, the point is here, we can work with you one-on-one. There's lots of options.
Yeah, so thank you. You know, I had sent out kind of a form and we did have some folks who submitted some questions ahead of time. I want to kind of get to those. We'll walk through those together. And then I know we do have a couple questions that have come through since we've been on with you guys as well. So we will start just, you know, generally probably the most question or the question we get asked most often is how much do they cost? I mentioned our feasibility study a little bit more, or excuse me, a little bit previously, but you know, every site is so different, every jurisdiction is different. And so the elements of cost that are including, you know, your horizontal infrastructure, your permitting, how we're getting, you know, how we're even applying for permits. Are we doing an ADU versus a single family home or a detached duplex? So project costs can be very hard to estimate, which is why we have the feasibility study the way that we do. Very generally, I would say our average project for just an individual ADU is going to be somewhere between 200 and 350 is kind of what we see on average. But again, very, very site specific. A lot of things that we don't really know until we, you know, kind of take a look at the site and, you know, kind of get into the weeds with it a little bit as well. Another question, you know, where do we build? So we can build Hiatus at Home plans throughout Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and parts of Montana. We can also, in certain instances, we will look at doing a cottage community design on a more national level. And so if you're looking to develop your own little cottage cluster, or, kind of develop 3, 4, 5, or 50 units. We can actually come in and do the same thing that we do. Again, working closely with a general contractor that builds in that area, and still come in and do that construction management piece as well. So, really strong presence here in the kind of mountain Northwest. But like Ryan said, we do have projects, Florida, Connecticut, Michigan, where we're kind of working in these, kind of larger cottage community designs as well.
Right, those aren't one-off projects. That's not like a single ADU. Those are cottage community developments and everything. So, yeah, as we go through these questions, if you have a couple of folks already typing in questions live into the Q&A box, go ahead and throw your questions in there. We're happy to answer them live and or follow up with you after the meeting. Another common question we get, and we got this on the form coming in, is, why can't I just hire a general contractor? Of course you totally can. What a lot of people miss on that is the quality of design and construction that we offer. A general contractor, your local GC, may not be very experienced in actually building small, and you end up with a lot of mistakes the first time you build small. Like, you pull out a drawer and it hits your oven, or it won't open, and your fridge is weird and everything. It's very hard to build in tight spaces, and most general contractors are more used to building larger custom homes. You'll also tend to be more expensive if you just go hire an architect and a general contractor. Our designs, which have been, kind of tested and tried and true, we've really optimized them for value engineering to try and save our clients money. And so, that can be really helpful to our clients. We've got another page of Q&A, but I want to answer a couple of live questions here before we go into those. What's the estimated increase in property value with one of your units? Of course, it totally depends, zip code to zip code, neighborhood to neighborhood. It's different on different sides of Bend. But to give you a more specific answer, we're seeing value increases between 350 and 450,000 on a property when we add an ADU to it, and that's an ADU that costs about 250,000 all in to build. So you're getting great appreciation by adding an ADU to your property. Another one, let's see. Does it cost to have a feasibility study performed by your team? Yes, it does. Feasibilities take us a lot of time. We really put a lot into it, and we see that as just business development for us. We're just trying to, build a relationship with a client, but we can't do them for free because they do take a lot of time, and we put an investment to them. So typically we charge just an hourly fee on these. And we write a scope with our client of, like, here's what this feasibility is going to look like. Here's the cap of the maximum that our client, kind of wants to spend. We'll check in with them before we hit that. Usually they're anywhere from about, $2,000 to $4,000 for just a single unit project, to, upwards of 10 to 30,000 for a large development, 50, 80 units. And so they can run the gamut from a cost standpoint. We tend to do them hourly so we can scale them to our client.
And because we do them hourly, if there are things that, if there's research that you've already done, if you've already started some conversations with the city or the county that you're working in, that can be something where, you can save some costs on the feasibility study. It's a little bit of the scope is a little bit of an a la carte, right? So if you really excel in a certain aspect and we don't have to go into that kind of alongside you, we really want to personalize that feasibility study so that you understand what you're getting, but that you're not also paying extra for something that you can do and kind of that you excel in already.
A really common question we get, and we just got this: can we deviate from the plans we already have designed? And the answer is to a point. And so we like to stay within our plans, and that's how we're going to deliver you a pretty affordable unit that we have our costs nailed down on. We will certainly make some customizations on that with you. That starts with fixtures and finishes, which are built in. You get to pick those. Then that can grow to, I want to move this window or that window, or add this door or a deck here. All that's no problem. if it starts to be significant around like changing the structure, and everything, there's a point where we'll say, you know what, you need to go hire a custom architect. Because what you want is too much of a deviation from what we do. That's something we deal with on a case-by-case basis. All the changes we make to our plans, we'll do that just on an hourly architectural fee. And so, we'll let you know, ooh, that's a pretty big change. That's going to require some civil engineering and, 20 hours of design time. Is that what you want? And you'll get a chance to say yes, no on that. So the answer is kind of like certainly a soft yes, to deviate from our plans within a kind of range of outcomes. So yeah, you've probably been looking at these three Q&A answers here, so we won't necessarily go through those. If you have another question, kind of last chance. Otherwise, we'll wrap up in the next 2 or 3 minutes here. And we're happy to connect with you after this presentation one-on-one. We are lining up our design and construction schedule for the spring right now. So it's a great time to get on board. We will only take so many of these projects per quarter. And so we'd love to work with you. This is really fun for us. We love getting these projects into the market, and having satisfied clients. So yeah, if you have another question, real quick, type it in. Oh, we just got one last minute question and then we'll pop off here. How much is an estimated feasibility cost? So again, a lot of times, it'll depend on the size of the project, but it can be anywhere from about 2,000 to 10,000 if the project is kind of like 1 to 4 units. And a lot of times we will ask for a $5,000 retainer to start, and then we'll agree on a scope. Maybe that'll be a maximum of $7,000 total or something. And but again, we can scale that up and down depending on your project, because we'll just charge the hours that it takes to work on it. Great. Anything else?
Yeah, nothing for me.
Okay. Thank you all for joining. Really appreciate your time. Again, we'll follow up with you. Send us an email or give us a call if you're really eager to get started, so we can get you on our construction schedule, and get designs going. Okay.
Thanks so much.